ohmTown Daily News Show. Hello, I'm Mayor Watt. If you saw the very beginning of this, you might actually have seen me in large and in charge because I didn't minimize my screen. So if you're curious what I look like larger, go and look at the beginning of the VOD. It will only be there for 14 days. In the meantime, I'm Mayor Watt. I run that site. It's a news aggregation site that throws a bunch of news into 6 categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. Within that are 50 channels. Those channels, I intend to bring them to Twitch as hourly shows. And I'm looking for hosts. So if you're interested, let me know. We'll have a conversation and we'll see what goes from there. That said, the only show that's actually active right now is ODNS, which is the ohmTown Daily News Show. It is one of the ones that are in the news category right here, DNS. I've already selected a bunch of articles I think are interesting or relevant to the times, current times. If you're listening to this via the podcast weeks from now, then it's relevant then, not now. Cultural relativism. In this case, it's temporal relativism. So it's like I mentioned periodically throughout my shows, throughout the podcast, since it's based on this show and on YouTube, context matters. So if I say or I do something of that time, it's relevant to that time and not in the future. If I am wrong about something, it's wrong now, it may not have been wrong then. I bring this up because people are haunted by their past, and sometimes the context of their past is different. Sometimes it's absolutely not different, and it never should have been said or done. And that's why I encourage more conversation than how some things I've seen shows kind of go off the rails, and it's a lot of screaming and people being bent out of shape about things. For many things, you can recover from it, talk about it, find some middle ground, hash it out. Sometimes, though, you just can't, and you have to part ways as not agreeing. That said, let's get on with this show. I've got about 20 articles. I'll go through them. I'll try and add some context, but it's really about drawing awareness to various elements. One of the things that has kind of been a steady state for the last 15 days has been the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, or I should say, the conflict between Russia and pretty much the rest of the world. And this episode is pretty much going to draw a lot more attention to that, simply because the news is just rife with things about Russia and even how it is impacting the economy. Today, for the first time, I've seen gas at $5 a gallon. And for me, I've lived on both coasts of the United States and traveled back and forth, and I don't remember paying $5 a gallon, but here we are. I have a different take on this. I don't think that it is inflation so much as profiteering, and I'm happy to talk about it if you are interested in talking about it. But it might provoke a discussion that pulls us away from the news. So let me start with the news, and we can go from there. The very first article is in the Stock Marketeers channel, and it's about Peloton, and that the Peloton Interactive Company's new chief executive is looking to overhaul the stationary bike maker's pricing strategy in a bid to turn around the company. It basically just took a bunch of hits, one after another. It's really interesting that what amounted to a pretty solid reputation suddenly collapsed. and they started struggling. This article is on MarketWatch. Yeah, they slightly changed the article. I'm gonna have to do something here. 1 second. I'll just leave it alone. Peloton to test new price plans in effort to turn the company around. I'm gonna have to change something on the site because I think I broke something right before my stream. In the meantime, Sharon Turlip is the author of this for MarketWatch. And it says, starting Friday, stores in states like Texas and Florida will sell bundled subscriptions for between $60 and $100 a month. Totally saw this writing on the wall. And I still think that I'm going to look through this really quick. And unless the bike is included in the pricing, I still don't think that this has legs or wheels, so to speak. Because I think that the bike is very expensive and you have to pay for an expensive subscription. And it's going to end up pricing people out who might be able to foot the bill for the bike, but not a sustained price for the subscription. Or it needs to be kind of one in the same, where if it's $60 to $100, it includes the bike, and you pay basically the bike off as you go. But it says, if adopted, the model would be a major shift for Peloton, which built a business around selling high-price, screen-equipped stationary bikes alongside a $40 per month subscription. So it says here, select Peloton stores in Texas, Florida, Minnesota, and Denver will for a limited period offer a bike and subscription for between $60 and $100 a month. An experiment that aims to find a price. Like, I would do this. I would pay $60 to get the bike and the subscription, but I'm not going to shell out $2,000 for a stationary bike only to also have to pay, well, at the price of $40 per month, it was still $500 a year just for the subscription. You know, the two, it just doesn't jive. But for $600, $720 a year, maybe $1,000 a year, it'd be really tough for me to justify $1,000 a year. I might get the bike and the subscription. If it keeps you engaged, then your health is worth it, right? Well, not everybody wants that as well. They don't know. Some people, that's why I said at the onslaught of the Peloton issue, when Peloton started taking these reputational hits from TV shows, SNL, and somebody saying that they've had a heart attack on the bike in a TV show, I said, really the problem is that this company has a finite number of customers, and the only time new customers come on board is when somebody looks past the cost and says, yeah, you know, I'll do this and I'll commit to a subscription, because without the subscription, it's basically just a bike. You know, although it might be a nice frame, I've read other things about how there was rust inside the frame, something like that, and a repair needed to be done, and they found that rust in there. I don't know the specifics of it. All I know is that it's on the outside, it looks like a nice bike, but it's not a $2,000 bike without the subscription. You need the subscription. So I wish them luck. I would rather pay $50 a month and get the bike, and then you can always come and get the bike if I fail to renew. But somebody's got to take some risks, and $2,000 for a bike is too much of a risk for me to try it out, kind of a thing. The next article is in the Stock Marketeers channel as well, and we'll click the link. It says the U.S. posted a budget deficit of $217 billion in February versus a shortfall of $300 billion in the same month last year, reflecting slower growth in government debt after the end of the pandemic-induced federal stimulus. So let's click this link. So again, this is a MarketWatch article. It's written by Jeffrey Bartash. The U.S. budget deficit is set to fall sharply this year after the end of most government stimulus. So it says here, the U.S. posted a budget deficit of $217 billion in February versus a shortfall of $311 billion in the same month last year, reflecting slower growth in government debt. So this is a kind of oddball way of saying that debt creation has slowed. It makes it sound a little more convoluted than it really is. But basically, there isn't so much debt creation. And governments operating at a deficit are building debt, and something has to pay it off. If you don't, eventually it'll all catch up to you. You can't pay your creditors, and if you can't pay your creditors, then your credit gets, well, we'll just say tarnished. And then all hell breaks loose because people won't invest in bonds. Spending in February totaled $506 billion, down from $559 billion a year earlier. And the amount of taxes collected rose to $290 billion from $248 billion. And that's where people kind of have issues, right? Well, if there's a lot of social programs, but these programs go into the economy, and for every dollar the government spends, $8 worth of wealth or value is generated. And those are numbers from something like a decade ago. I'd have to find another article about it. And there's all kinds of machinations here around government contracting and government spending and private and public partnerships and technology exchanges. Just a ton of stuff goes on. So all of the money that gets spent by the federal government doesn't just disappear somewhere. It actually gets spent on the citizenry. You may not agree on which citizens get it, but the fact of the matter is that we all benefit from government spending in one way or another, be it better public schools, or better roads, or programs that keep people from, being illiterate and then turning to crime, or having to retool for another job. There's all kinds of stuff that government spending, problems, I should say, that government spending solves. And we're all part of this big experiment in democracy. So, that said, it says the big picture: the deficit is on track to fall sharply because of the end of the massive federal stimulus. The government spent trillions in 2020 and 2021 to prop up the economy during the worst of the pandemic, but most of the stimulus has faded. Not really. I mean, it's still being used. The gross national debt recently surpassed 30 trillion for the first time. Yeah, let's not mention the historical context of massive amounts of money being injected into the economy to save banks or save businesses, but nothing going to the individuals. It seemingly always goes to the mega businesses, with this idea of trickle down economics, which really the only thing that trickles down, well, you can imagine. So I'm going to just kind of transition over to the next article. For whatever reason, the articles right now aren't showing the title, and so it's causing a problem on the site, but I will remedy it as soon as I'm done with the stream. This next article is in the Far Weekly channel, and This is from federalnewsnetwork.com. It says defense contractor revenue is strong, so why is the state of the sector weakening? The Defense Department's mandated report from President Joe Biden's July executive order on promoting competition would lead you to think the shrinking supply chain is putting the nation at risk. A week before that report dropped, the National Defense Industries Association, or NDIA, rang the alarm bells that played a similar tune. The vital signs report from NDIA found the health of the DIB at its lowest point since the launch of the review, with 5 of 8 categories falling below the passing grade of 70 out of 100. And let's see. So why is it shrinking? Well, probably because arguably we're in a more stable era than ever in terms of domestic conflict, us being pulled into another area. And then suddenly this Russia thing crops up, and we're trying to avoid a direct confrontation with Russia, so we're not going to go into Ukraine. And we bowed out of Afghanistan and Iraq, and we're largely pulled back from other places. We use private contractors in other areas. I think that I wouldn't say that the writing is on the wall, but that is why things are declining. But we're still selling all kinds of weapons and defense, offensive and defensive military grade equipment to various countries. So let's continue. The next article is in Far Weekly as well. Far Weekly, by the way, is a channel about, I haven't been posting everything into this. And I didn't tell you who the author was of that last article. So the defense contractor revenue is strong, so why is the state of the sector weakening? Article is written by Jason Miller. This next article is a thing called, it's the Space Hour, and it's a panel, and they talk about the state of the space industrial base. It's actually a podcast. The author of the article is Eric White, and it says, for this week we'll be airing a panel that I hosted recently for AFCEA Nova's Space Force IT Day earlier this month. And the panel is on the topic of the state of the space industrial base. And the guests are Brigadier General Stephen Buteau, or Buteau. I haven't heard it pronounced. So the Space Portfolio Director for the Defense Initiative Unit, and others. So this is a podcast, and you should actually go and check it out. And you'll want to look for, I think it's called Federal Drive, yeah. So I think it's Federal Drive, and you'll want to go and take a look for this. And you could probably search for the state of the space industrial base. I encourage people to look into what government contracting is, because the idea that the government is just willy-nilly and spending stuff outrageously priced and not maximizing benefit and so on is the issue is that it's kind of mistargeted, because it isn't up to the government. There's a certain set of rules, federal acquisition regulations, they have to follow. So you can't just go and buy something off the shelf for everything. You have to put out proposals, and people put in bids, and there are requests made by the federal government, and people within them write an offer, hey, my company can do this. And then the federal government contract us. There's people within government that review contracts and evaluate them, but they're only allowed to use the ones that are submitted, meet certain requirements, and then the scope of those offerers are evaluated further. And so you might get 8 submissions, only 4 of them meet the requirements because 4 of them took a shot in the dark and missed the target entirely. And then within those, the evaluation lowers it again because out of the 4 that are remaining, 3 of them can actually do the job and 1 of them has 0 history. And when you look at the proposal, it's missing certain things, so they're out. And so now the competition is constrained down to 3 from 8, let's say. They may or may not be outrageously priced at the time, but the federal government has only one of 2 options. Either go out and reshop it, which means delay, and when I mean delay, I mean it's significant, or they take one of the 3 that are capable of filling out the paperwork and have all of the requirements. And then we go deeper from there. So we can talk about that more if you are also interested. But that's what the FAR Weekly channel is all about. This next article is also in the FAR channel, and it's Innovation for IRS Customer Experience Hangs on Cost Effectiveness. And so this article is talking about the IRS and the fact that it has certain tools, but the customer capabilities, the customer side of things, really needs to be evolved. And it says here, this is a question. Okay, so a Form 1040 tax return may be worth the cost of digitization, but what about a more obscure document that may be cheaper to keep in paper form? So this whole thing, this particular question this is a question the IRS considers when it decides to fund innovative efforts. The agency needs to be economical as it tries to improve customer experience, as the December executive order put pressure on agencies to do. Although some might advocate making all 1,439 IRS forms digital, that may be less practical because the life cycles of those forms vary depending on how taxpayers and businesses use them. True, but okay, so before I continue, the article is written for the federalnewsnetwork.com, and it's written by Amelia Brust, B-R-U-S-T. I want you to go over and read these articles. I throw them in chat so that you can go over to them, and I mention them and the author so that you can do a search for them. I just kind of add a little bit of context to it from my particular perspective. It might be of value to you and it might not be. But it's important to learn about these things, to know about them, even if it's on the side of your memory at a later date. You go, oh yeah, I remember, when Mayor Watt was talking about this article or this bit of information. And it says here, Harrison Smith, co-director of the IRS Enterprise Digitization and Case Management Office, said the enterprise perspective goes back to mission, stitching together funding and policies to optimize the agency's approach. Pilot programs can sometimes be as small as 30 days long and $25,000, which Smith described as minuscule for federal government, but if the pilot works, they can keep funding it. And therein lies kind of the rub, right? So there's certain mandates, there's certain envelopes, certain scopes of operation that are authorized within an agency, within an organizational unit, within a space, some enterprise, right? But the valuations that are given are either way too small or massive, open-ended. And then somebody goes, well, look at that. I have the ability to do all of this, and government has deep pockets. So if I fill out the paperwork right and everybody else does the same thing who's going to apply to fulfill this obligation, they all, go, well, let's add a 0 to this. The competition basically will go to whoever the best bang for the buck is, the best cost to budget kind of thing. The idea is to get as much for the dollar as possible. But the problem here is that there's only so much that somebody knows. And so you're only getting the people that have the ability to fill out that form, not necessarily the people that are very motivated and very capable and may be innovative in terms of doing this type of work. So for $30, $30,000, I should say, somebody else very effective, very capable could do it, but they never even apply because it's convoluted and arcane, or they don't have the right connection to even apply. But there are people out there that can definitely do something. I think that this is a problem with government contracting. And the only way to increase competition is to talk about it. And that's why I want to put that show together. So if you're interested in government contracting, you might be a subject matter expert, come and co-host it with me. In the meantime, I'm going to continue on to the next article. This next article, throw it in chat, is in the Mobile channel. And this is about, it says, brief encounters with a micro mini skirt, a low-rise skirt by Miu Miu, I guess, went viral last month. Here, 3 perspectives on wearing it. So this article is written by Jessica Testa for New York Times. And it says the Miu Miu, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, M-I-U skirt is so short that it seems to have no end. I'm not quite sure what that means. For the last 2 weeks, it's made nearly daily appearances on the covers of magazines, on the bodies of celebrities and influencers, and as the subject of articles about its reach. But there's always been micro mini skirts that are out there. I figured it was interesting because I have never, in the last 69 days, I haven't done, in the previous 68 days, I suppose, I haven't talked about fashion in any way. I'm not the fashion expert. I'm wearing a shirt from Amazon Web Services, for crying out loud, and doing a show on Twitch, purporting to be something close to an authority on news, I suppose. But anyway, I thought it was going to be interesting, and maybe somebody else wants to take a stab at having a conversation about this. If you are interested in fashion, if you're interested on its impact on society, and that is the reason why I brought it in here, because it actually merges all 3 of the things that I'm talking about. When the first miniskirt was worn, society went all a titter, or Twitter, I should say, and a different type of Twitter. It went just bananas, right? It was everybody was upset about it except the people wearing a miniskirt. Jaws dropped. People clutched their pearls. Nowadays, it's, okay, whatever. And it goes viral. Why? Because it's titillating. People think that it's either interesting or sexy or something unique, something new. Well, the skirt itself has business implications. It has technology implications. It has societal implications. People are still going bonkers about a skirt as if it should be something outrageously sociological. I mean, it's clothing and it's covering all of the parts that a bathing suit covers, yet we don't go bananas about bathing suits unless it's even ultra skimpier than a normal everyday bathing suit. So why is the skirt? It has business implications because business is selling these things and people are paying big money for it. If you've gone to look at a pair of jeans that are considered trendy, you're looking at $500, $600 for a pair of jeans that have torn knees or staining in a particular way, because I can't remember what they're called. It's kind of like sneakerheads, but I think it's like a jean head kind of thing. I don't know what it's called. But And then it has technological implications because these go viral. The reason why they go viral isn't because they're just being worn in some small town back road place. It's because technology has spread the messaging far and wide, and that is driving people to go and buy, and to stand out, because people who buy these things start talking about it and the hype is real, so they want to get into it. And then you have the whole FOMO thing, right? Fear of missing out. People buy them. They may even go into debt because they want them. So I don't think that's particularly short for a skirt, considering I've seen shorter, but people are all wearing them. So I wonder how much these cost. I don't know if they even talk about it in here. Nope. Yeah, asking questions. Is it sexy or too sexy? It's a skirt. So let's continue on to the next article. And like I said, things are kind of wonky right now at ohmTown. I'm making some changes and trying to stop certain things from breaking. But I'm managing. So if you swing by, there might be some things that look a little quirky. This next article is in Smack Talk. It's about iPad Air. We'll click the link and look at the title. They compare over at Apple Insider two iPad Airs, the 2020 version and the 2022 iPad Air. This article is written by Malcolm Owen, and they're supposed to be, well, I'm going to hold off on this. Let's see. The 5th generation iPad Air has launched with an upgrade to M1 and 5G support, but it may be a tough choice for folks that are already own the 4th generation model, and here's how the two stack up. And you can read more about it, but they're essentially the same all the way down until you get to the M1 chip and the type of connectivity. And so the new ones have 5G. Both of them have Wi-Fi 6. Both of them have LTE. But the newest one has a 5K or 5G, I'm sorry. And I think that's pretty much the only difference. They both use USB-C. One weighs 0.02 pounds more. So yeah, pretty much identical. But that M1 is a beast. And so that's reason alone to upgrade if you have the 2020. And I will probably do that rotation and give my iPad Air to someone else. I have an iPad Pro as well. So anyway, go and check it out. I think that you'll like the new iPad Air, the 2022 iPad Air. The next article is about the Mac Studio. I spoke about it yesterday, and there's some stats that have come out about it. The leaked M1 Ultra Mac Studio benchmarks prove it outclasses the top Mac Pro. This is by Mike Peterson. It was actually written a couple of days ago, and I wanted to kind of highlight this new chip. Apple's M1 Ultra chip achieved a 1793 score in single core Geekbench 5 testing and 24,055 score in multi-core testing. That's just bananas. For comparison, Apple's Mac Pro with a 28 core Intel Xeon W scored an average of 1,152 in single core, and its multi-core was only 19,951. So kind of destroyed it. And I think it's pretty much because of its optimizations. The way that it merges together, it's a seamless machine. And with the latest technologies and everything being on the chip, it's just destroying the competition. It's so much faster. It says the M1 Ultra is 56% faster, which is in line with Apple's own claimed benchmarks. While the single core scores are roughly comparable, the M1 Ultra's multi-scores are 105% higher than the M1 Max. So it's basically just crushing even its own vertical, which is kind of expected. This machine, the Mac Studio at its highest build of accessories is $8,000. So for $8,000, it better be a beast. Let's continue on to the next article. This is about a songwriter producer, and it's in the continuity report. Did I paste it over here? Yeah. And this again continues in this trend that I've been watching, wherein people seem to be selling their catalog and getting the money. This is an article for Variety by Jem Aswad. And superstar producer Taney sells catalog to Influence Media in a $25 million deal. And this is an exclusive for Variety. But it amounts to something that I've been watching happen, where people are selling their entire catalog and then taking the money and running. I don't know the minutia of these deals, other than they're making some serious change and then bowing out. Then they can concentrate on other things, either enjoying the rest of their life with $25 million plus, or they're going to continue to create new work and then create another catalog and sell it. That's just kind of how things are. But $25 million in hand allows you to invest it and make some serious change on nothing more than interest and dividends that your stocks might be generating. Let alone you could be buying, selling, and doing whatever you want with all that money. Let's continue on to the next article. This next article is in the Word in Tech. And let's click that. And the article is titled "The Steam Deck Now Runs Windows. Valve offers no Windows support and the speakers won't work, but somebody's done it." Sean Hollister from The Verge wrote the article, and it says here, so there's no dual boot. Valve says you can only install Windows 10 since the Steam Deck's current BIOS apparently doesn't include TPM support. And now it's required in Windows 11, by the way. So when you try to install it, you really should check to see if you have TPM support. Sometimes it's disabled. Sometimes it's a BIOS upgrade to activate it, or you have to just go into BIOS and activate it. But you have to have TPM support. At any rate, you can apparently run Windows on it. Valve shipped its $400 gaming console, the Steam Deck, before all its promised features were ready. But one of the biggest is now here. You can now install Windows 10 on a Steam Deck and actually expect it to work, because Valve has just released the all-important GPU, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth drivers you'll need to download and play games. So now this thing has just been kicked up another notch. There will probably be some way to get Windows 11 to run it without the TPM. Who knows? There are some pretty genius people out there that will find some way to make it run, if by disabling it in some weird side-loaded method. But it says, and your speakers and headphone jack won't work because there's no audio drivers yet. But once somebody tears the thing apart and finds out what it is, they'll be able to find out what drivers would support it. But go and check it out. There's a whole video about the Steam Deck on this article. The next article is in the Mobile channel. let me post it in chat. And here kind of begins a series of articles that are not really political in nature. It's really a reaction to what's going on in Ukraine. This is an article by New York Times, written by Lonan Nguyen. And Goldman Sachs on Thursday became the first big American bank to say that it would exit Russia after Western governments imposed a raft of sanctions intended to cripple its economy. By the way, let's go through the rest of the articles. Hours later, J.P. Morgan Chase, the biggest bank in the United States, said that it was winding down there too. And we'll see if other banks do this. Other countries might be backing out as well. But there are quite a bit of unified sanctions across the EU and the United States, all impacting Russia and the fact that it invaded Ukraine. I mean, this is all because of Russia just arbitrarily invading another country. But ironically, utilizing some of the messaging that the United States has used to justify a campaign in another country. So whenever you bring this up with anybody that is on the side of the Russians or any other country invading another country, they basically say, well, you're being a hypocrite because ... Well, no, not really, because it was all largely, false messaging from us as well to justify this war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then we got mired into it. So we just bogged down in a country that has never really been successfully in any way, aligned with another country's, ideology. It's very tough to change the hearts and minds of a people. And you definitely don't do it by bombing them. At any rate, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase are winding down in Russia. I'm going to continue on because there might be an article about what I was about to talk about. I'm not quite sure yet. I don't remember them all. This next article involves another thing about the MacBook Air. So, MacBook Air with new form factor, more colors to arrive in 2022, says Quo. The article is written by Mike Peterson for Apple Insider. And we know that the MacBook Air is going to sport a new form factor and new colors. And to me, though, I think that cases are pretty much where personalization is. I hate the idea. This is just me talking, right? I'm not really trying to change anybody's mind about this, but for me, I don't want to carry my devices around naked. I want them to have a case on them, because if you drop them or you scratch them or whatever, if you drop them, you're going to scratch them or dent them or whatever. And I want my device to still be pristine throughout its existence, because I'm going to end up handing it down or selling it to somebody else, and I want it to be perfect for them. The only thing I would have to do with any of my devices that I end up selling or giving or donating, right? I might sell them to somebody. I might donate them to a third party. I might gift them to a family member that has another older piece of technology and they're upgrading. I want to be able to just wipe it clean, hand them the device, and they've got a perfect, somewhat, other than the age, it's a brand new device. So, but that's just me. So this article is a little bit older, and you'll have to go. I would suggest watching the Apple presentation People summarize these things, but you miss a lot of the context of it. So, and I'm a big proponent of you watching the entire or getting the full picture of the device, and not just the little bits. If you're already tech savvy, then you're already aware of most of the things that I'm talking about, except for some of the context that I would be talking about. It may be specific to me. This next article, though, I don't know. This is an article from phys.org, and it's written by the Deutsche Elektronensynchrotron, and it's the cosmic particle accelerator reaches theoretical limit. White dwarfs are burnt out old stars that have collapsed in on themselves and develop into extremely compact objects. Nova events occur, for example, when a white dwarf is in a binary system with a large star and the white dwarf gathers material from its more massive companion due to its gravity. And then once the gathered material goes over a critical level, it spurs a thermonuclear explosion on the surface of the white dwarf. Some nova are known to repeat. RS Ophiuchi is one of those recurrent nova. The research group that this article is referencing observed that the particles were accelerated to energy several hundreds of times higher than previously observed in nova, or novae. I think it's just pronounced nova. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say novae. Additionally, the energy released as a result of the explosion was transformed extremely efficiently into accelerated protons and heavy nuclei, such that the particle acceleration reached the maximum speeds calculated in theoretical models. So I suspect that the theoretical models are probably, well, I don't suspect. I know that they are bound by our expectations based on previous research. So there might be a new theoretical limit because this influences the historical context, and so you end up kind of pushing that next level. Naturally, a researcher may find that no, there isn't anything that's faster than this theoretical and now demonstrably proven model, or we just haven't found the minutia that allows us to push a little bit further. But that's the objective of a PhD, really. You want to expand your level of knowledge, and then I think it's an XKCD cartoon strip where you kind of just poke a hole and push out that bubble, and that's your PhD. I think it's a great representation of what a PhD is. Hyper-focused, dedicated, fundamental research that pushes the limit in a very, very specific area. But this will continue to grow. I'm sure that there will be more research done on this, particularly when we've got more space-based observation systems planned for the future. Maybe we can get something further out into space, away from Earth, and still pointing in a way where we can look everywhere instead of a very limited field of view. We'd have to... Anyway, like I say in many of my shows, I end up going down a rabbit hole of conversation, and if you are interested in talking about it more, I'm happy to stay and chat. So this next article, again, is going to be referencing Russia, and this is what I was going to mention earlier. I've been parsing news in various places. I haven't read this article, just like all the rest of the articles. I don't read the article prior to it. I just have experience and some understanding based on other articles that I've been reading. And this article for Apple Insider is written by Mike Peterson, and it says, the title is Russia Considering Nationalizing Apple and Others That Left the Country. And this was stated as much that Putin will be taking over companies that exit. So I have been talking about this with people, but I didn't say it on the stream because I thought that maybe things would kind of shut down by this time. But that's not what's going on. But a lot of people are talking about this in terms of all of these assets are going to be acquired by Putin and then doled out to the oligarchs. And basically these power brokers, these people who are absolutely wealthy, they own the country, and it's the upper echelon. They control everything, and they will refire the engines of this and put people to work, but they will own all of these assets. And to me, it's insane. It's insanity that this war provoked a response where the upper echelon of the Russian government is going to benefit from this action. There's all of these people, these soldiers that are supposedly conscripts, which apparently is a crime in and of itself. But then when these Western countries purge themselves from Russia, they're just going to scoop it all up. And I had read somewhere that they're even going to resurrect the brands within Russia by changing the trademark terms so that it can persist. And it's basically all a lie. These companies aren't going to exist in Russia anymore, but their name is going to live on in the oligarchy running these businesses with the same name. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But there has been talk, at least in Western news and Western podcasts. And I even suggested, not in a podcast, but I suggested in conversation that this is what would be going on. Nationalization of previously private enterprise after they exit. And there's really nothing, it's beyond arm's length. Once you vacate the country, just like China, if China wanted to run Apple, then China could run Apple and just nationalize it and start running the brand within China. And the only thing that China, or I should say Apple, would be able to do is kind of shrug and go, well, crap, I guess they're doing it too. But I got to continue on. The next article is in the Mobile channel. The headlines are missing, so I broke something right before my stream. This next article is in the New York Times. It's in a Wheels segment. It's Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT and electric family tree is what the article is saying. It's written by Lawrence Ulrich. And it says, as far as we can tell, Henry Ford and other auto pioneers made no attempt to imitate the nostalgic clopping of hooves or the smell of hay. Very cute. Anyway, but even as automakers look to wean drivers off internal combustion, they're not abandoning valuable brand signatures honed over decades. The look, feel, even the sounds of old tech analog cars. Think the muscle car cues for Ford's electric Mustang Mach-E, or the relentless scrutiny of towing capacity and other truck stop bona fide. I don't know why I always goof around with this word. Bona fides or bona fides. Depends on how you want to pronounce it, but I think it's bona fides. Anyway, for the Ford F-150 Lightning, by the way, I don't like the Mach-E. I think it loses its Mustang, I don't know, personality. It's too soft in the corners, not the performance wise. I'm talking about the design, the industrial design of the Mach-E. It's just too rounded. It doesn't seem to have any. The stance is kind of weak compared to old school Mustangs. So I really like the combustion engine versions of it, but I'd love to have everything the Mach-E has in the old school design. But the Ford F-150 Lightning is an amazing looking truck. I dig it. Well, now there's the new Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo and the Audi RS e-tron GT. These beasts are $100,000 cars, so I won't be getting one anytime soon. I don't think I would be able to justify $100,000 even if I had it to spend on a car. But different world, different folks. But I would love to have a 1,000 horsepower car where I can mash that accelerator, and there's no reason for it. None at all. You don't need it. Nobody needs that kind of power. All it is show off. What I want is automated driving, and I can just say, take me to wherever, and it'll take me. And I don't have to worry about people merging dumb and being drunk or stoned or not paying attention or whatever is going on in their car. It would be awesome to have entirely self-driving cars. And electric cars would be great, except it takes too long to charge. I've said that before in previous article. The next article is in the Daily News Show, which is this show. And it's about social media users are suggesting soaring fuel prices in the U.S. are part of some government scheme to get drivers into electric vehicles. Well, I can tell you that is definitely not what it's all about. Let's go here. Pardon me. Let me pause this. I'm not going to show any war video on the stream. Gas price hikes fueling electric vehicle conspiracy theories. Social media users are suggesting soaring fuel prices in the U.S. are part of a government scheme to get drivers into electric vehicles. And this is an article for ABC News, written by Amanda Seitz of the Associated Press. And I won't go into a lot of this, but for whatever reason, there's 10% of society that just rambles on as conspiracy, everything. You can probably land a UFO on the lawn of the White House and people will say it's a conspiracy. For us to buy bomb shelters or something, it's just ridiculous. Well, anyway, the reason why gas prices are so high is because companies are profiteering off of the conflict and off of the struggle in the economy and blaming inflation and whatever else. Well, inflation exists because people are still demanding wildly outrageous out-of-line profits based on some perceived pricing strategy of, well, it's price elasticity of demand. People are going to pay that fee no matter what. And so you have to pay for gas. You have to pay for paper products, for food, various staples. You have to. The only other way around it is to stop. And unless you live within walking distance of work and food supplies, you are going to pay to drive. So jack up the price. This conflict between Russia and Ukraine shouldn't be impacting gas prices. The margin is well enough suited to withstand this. But stakeholders, stockholders, profiteers are going to continue to demand profits at a certain level revenue at a certain level, and therefore you have an uptick in prices. This next article, and happy to discuss it with somebody that thinks otherwise. As long as you keep a level head, I'm happy to discuss it. No screaming, no hollering, no name calling. Happy to discuss it. Top 5 best 3D printing carbon fiber filaments. Are you a 3D printer? Wait, if you're talking, you're not a 3D printer. But anyway, do you have a 3D printer? Do you want to print carbon fiber filaments? You should probably outfit your device differently than with the regular brass extruder head. It'll destroy your 3D printer. But 3dinsider.com talks about carbon fiber filaments. This is an older article, and that's because I activated this a while back, and I haven't been activating the content. But it says here, top 5 best 3D printing carbon fiber filaments, written by Joseph Flint. Go and check it out. Overture Carbon Fiber PLA, 3DX Tech Carbon X ABS, Pryline, PETG, and others. PLA is probably the easiest to work with, and you have to do some special things with other types of filament. Sometimes you need to up the heated bed, or sometimes you have to make an enclosure. But most of the time you have to use a different extruder. The head of the tip, the nozzle, you have to swap it out for something that can withstand the carbon fiber being extruded through it. The next article is in the Constructagon channel. It is pretty much tech, 3D printing. This article actually is going to mention VR, though. It says care and maintenance tips for your VR headset. It too is written by Joseph Flint. This is again an older article, but VR and AR is still a trending topic, and I'm looking forward, hopefully, to Apple releasing an AR VR headset in the near future. I hope it's not 10 years from now. I want to enjoy it for a few decades. It would be really fun tech as long as it is wireless. I suspect that it'll be driven by an iPad or iPhone. Or it will be entirely self-contained with an M1 and then a battery pack, kind of a dongle thing. But anyway, you're going to want to read this article for VR headset maintenance. I have had the Index for a while, and then I sold it. But one of the things that really bothered me with anything VR was essentially when you wear it, you sweat. And a lot of people think, nah, that doesn't happen. But believe me, you sweat because you got this big contraption bolted on your head with very limited airflow. You radiate heat into it. And so you sweat. So invest in cleaning materials. And depending on the device, you can actually get little gadgets that attach to your VR headset to promote airflow, and replaceable, what amounts to gaskets for your headset, so that you can rip it off and put a new one on, hand it to somebody else, and clean yours. And like I had this gadget here, which basically is a VR tether. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I want you to go over to the article, and it's basically the care and feeding of your VR headset. And my aggregator will catch up with the news. And this last article is I wanted to talk about the GeForce Now RTX 3080 membership. If you've never heard of GeForce Now, you should go and check it out. So if you don't have a 3080, you're missing out on RTX style graphics. This article is for The Verge, written by Tom Warren. It says you no longer have to sign up for 6 months. It's $20 a month to use NVIDIA GeForce Now, which basically allows you to connect your library to a virtualized RTX 3080, and you stream the game, and it's virtually latency free. There's no lag, there's no nothing. I've used it for a while. I've watched other people use it. Nobody complains about latency. The only time you're going to run into latency problems, or lag or other issues, is if your network is really slow. So you'll want to invest, and I always say this anyways, invest in a quality internet connection if you can. Not everybody has the ability to. I understand that, but I'm going to click this link so that you can follow it over to The Verge. And just know that it's a monthly service. You have a certain number of hours that you can play it. You'll be able to stream, and it says here you can stream at up to 1440p resolution and 120 frames per second on Macs and PCs. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you're not driving the software at this point. You are receiving and sending the signals back for the actions in your games. But all you're doing is sending a couple of bits of data as per actions, right? Like telling it to go left or go right. You're not generating graphics. You're not sending graphics. The engine at NVIDIA is sending all of this data to you, and all you're doing is telling the character which direction to go or what moves to do. And it's just brilliant. And because it attaches to like your Steam library, you don't have to worry about licensing issues or somebody coming along saying, well, you can't do this or that, because all they're doing is taking your Steam library and running the software. It's all licensed. It all seems to work just fine. So go and check it out. I think it'll do you great if you don't have an RTX graphics card in your computer and you want to experience RTX level graphics. This is the way to do it. I'm not sure if I might have to, I'll have to check and see if they have Minecraft. I haven't played Minecraft with RTX because I don't have an RTX card. I can't justify $1,000 plus for a graphics card simply because crypto miners and profiteers are scooping them all up. Okay, well, with that in mind, I'm already a little late, about an hour plus into this. But like always, you can go over to ohmTown.com, click on the link, and if I didn't keep on breaking anything, all of this should refresh, and you will have a whole new set on the front page of various bits of news across a broad spectrum. Like I said, there's 6 main categories, and within them about 50 shows. I haven't made everything public, but the intent is to launch 50 one-hour shows each week on Twitch. So, and I would like to host and co-host them, but I'm willing to allow somebody to host an entire show, and everything is commensurate with whatever agreement we come to should you want to be a host. So reach out to me, let me know you're interested, and we can have a conversation. Sound good? Thank you very much for coming. I will see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye. Or not.